Hi, Internet people. Today I'm going to be talking about Captain America: The First Avenger. Now, this film came out in 2011, but only 2 months after the Thor movie, which I don't think Marvel does now. I think that if there are more than one Marvel movie coming out in the same year, it's at least more than 2 months apart. It's at least, I would say, 4 or 5 months. But anyway, back in 2011, this happened. Thor had come out in May, I think was a hit. And then in July of 2011, Captain America came out. And when I first saw this, I liked it. I definitely liked it. But I'm watching it more and just diving into it more. I've really come to appreciate it more than I used to. Um, so, today I'm going to talk first about Steve. Steve Rogers, Captain America. We see him before he's a super soldier, when he's just an ordinary human, an ordinary scrawny guy who gets into fights and gets beat up. Because he gets into fights because, well, maybe not all the time, but he's trying to defend something or someone. He's trying to do the right thing, essentially. Trying to, stand up for justice or stand up for what's right. And that's a good thing. That's good, but it kind of gets him beat up a lot, doesn't it? But anyway, yes. We see him in his scrap, and we see his friend, Bucky, kind of rescue him from that, and establishing their friendship, and, seeing where they were from as opposed to where they got to in the end. But for now, it's happier. It's a little bit more lighthearted. It's on the brink of what is to come. So yes, we see Steve. We see Bucky, who's been enlisted in the army, who's shipping off the next day, and this is their last night. And Steve wants so badly to enlist. He tries so many times, but he's been rejected, and he wants to fight for his country. He wants to do something good and make something of himself, but he hasn't been able to. And so Bucky, being the concerned friend that he is, doesn't want him to. He doesn't want to lose his friend, and I totally understand that. But, as it happens, Steve does end up getting enlisted, but this is after Bucky has already not left for war, but they are on a double date, but wasn't going that well for the girl Steve was paired with, which, I mean, honestly, I get why, but I think it's sad that he's such a sweet guy, and, they're not giving him a second look. But anyway, Steve gets overheard and is talking about how much he wants to enlist and do the right thing and fight for his country, and he gets overheard by a scientist, I think Dr. Erskine, and it's cool to see him try to enlist one more time, and then finally be given a chance. And he's asked this question about you want to enlist, you want to go fight Nazis, all that kind of thing. And Steve talks about how he doesn't like bullies. He doesn't like bullies, no matter where they're from. And he doesn't want to kill anyone, but he wants to stop the bullies. And this time, the bullies are a little bigger than he's used to fighting, but he does want to anyway. And this gives him a chance. This gives him a way in. And so we see him at boot camp, essentially. We see Peggy Carter for the first time, and I love her a lot. She's badass. She knows who she is. She's an awesome character, and she doesn't take anything from anyone. She doesn't take any crap from anyone, and I love that. I love that about her. So yeah, Steve at boot camp, he's having a hard time, getting through all the obstacle courses, all the physical exertion stuff. I mean, it'd be hard for an ordinary person, but for Steve, who has all these health problems and who just is not maybe quite on the level as some of the other guys physically, but as we all know, he's a noble, good person, and he has a good heart, and he proves that when there's a test of a dummy grenade being thrown and seeing what people do. He's the only one to throw himself on top of it, only to realize it's not real, it's a fake, it's a test. But he passed it, though, and it's awesome. And another thing I want to say about this movie is Tommy Lee Jones, obviously in a kind of role he's been in a lot of, kind of the curmudgeonly, guy who spouts the funny lines. But it's still nice to see that here. See that, that kind of dry sort of wit. But yes, so it seems Steve is selected to be turned into a super soldier, and he is, and it works, and wow. I mean, the transformation, craziness, because, one quick note, though, I know they worked really hard to create Skinny Steve, to have another actor kind of do the movement, try to imitate Chris Evans. They kind of shot some of those scenes twice, with the smaller actor and with Chris Evans. And I know that blending those two together couldn't have been easy. It had to have been a huge challenge. So I don't know anything about that process, really. I only know what I've read and what I've seen. I haven't actually done it before. So for me to critique how it turned out, or to critique, it almost seems like I shouldn't, because I don't know how that works. I've never been involved with a process like that, so maybe I have no right to say that sometimes it didn't look quite realistic. But, that's okay. It's not a flaw in the movie. But, he gets turned into a super soldier. He, gets to be on a level that he's never been at. And it also increases his goodness, his inherent good character, and that, makes him even more of a noble person than he already was. And that's really good too. But unfortunately the serum gets destroyed, and he's the only one. And so I read somewhere that, he's finally turned into a super soldier. He's finally given the strength he never had, only to be eventually told that he's still not good enough because it's just him. But even though it is just him, he ends up making a huge difference, and that's really awesome. I love the whole World War II aspect of this movie, kind of the history vibe. That's really cool. I think that's one of its strongest points, I think, in those times when it's the war, when it's something we all know, we're all familiar with, this history that we learned about, and, seeing our fictional characters in it is cool, and seeing how that plays into, what happens to them, and how their journey, what they experience. So, yeah, and we see him turn into a super soldier, but he's the only one. But and he's what happens is he's kind of turned into a commercialized propaganda, Captain America, kind of the name that's given to him to be used to promote war bonds and to raise money and fundraising stuff like that. And it's fun. It's definitely kind of for laughs, I guess, but that's okay. It's fun, and I think he might not have quite envisioned this when he got turned into a super soldier, but he's like that for a while, and maybe even gets used to it, goes with the flow. But and all this time he hasn't really done and maybe he feels like he hasn't done a lot that makes much of a difference, but he still is helping them. He's still helping the army, but it's increased even more when he hears that the 107th division was captured, and maybe they don't have the resources to go after them and try to rescue them, but he does. He goes because that was Bucky's division. He has to rescue his friend, and he does. He goes in there with his shield and by himself and sets people free, and that's where he first meets the people who would become part of the Howling Commandos, which is awesome, and it's really, really cool. They had this team working with him. It wasn't just him anymore. It was all these guys with their various strengths working together, and obviously seeing Bucky and rescuing him, that's other than their friendship, I love that a lot. And one thing I don't think I realized before is that when Steve first rescues first rescues Bucky, he's strapped to a table. He's been experimented on. And later I learned that Bucky had been injected with a serum, not the serum, but like a version of it. And that helped him survive the fall later. Spoiler alert. I'm so sorry. So, knowing that now and seeing that, it's just like, whoa. I didn't realize that at first. Anyway, another thing, side note, that I liked about this movie is seeing Howard Stark, who is Tony Stark's father. We definitely see the similarities between father and son. The inventor, quality, of course, that curiosity to try more, to invent more, create, but also, of course, the cocky attitude, too. So he goes on with his team, with the Howling Commandos, to, defeat Hydra, a rogue Nazi science division, who was led by the actor Hugo Weaving, who's playing the Red Skull, which, formidable villain, of course, definitely, and it ties into, I think, something that was at least mentioned in the last movie, in Thor, the Tesseract, that cube that we see, that Selvig will be working on, which we see more of later. You see that here, definitely. That's really cool tie-in, trying to make all the movies be kind of tied together in a way. But yeah, Steve is on these missions, and he's with his old friend who, I don't think I've realized this before, but subsequent rewatchings and reading on Tumblr all these metas and analysis, just that from Bucky's side, that Bucky at this point has been through a lot of war and has seen a lot of things, and is probably glad to, that he's reunited with Steve at this point, and not captured anymore. But but one thing I've read is that we all know that Bucky wanted to keep Steve safe, that he wanted to keep him from the war. And yes, Steve is more capable now, but Bucky still feels that way, and and so it's got to be hard seeing his friend in the thick of it now, and maybe can't get out of it. It's kind of unavoidable, but still, there are two friends reunited working together, and that's really good. And that of course, after seeing Winter Soldier, I appreciate Bucky here before all that went down so much more than I used to, and I'm very grateful for that, because they just more well-rounded perspective, I think. But yes, they keep working together. They keep defeating Hydra. It's awesome. Everybody working together. Everyone maybe even feeling like they're winning. And then they keep going, and they finally reach not their very last mission, but one of the last missions. And before that, the night before that, they talk. They kind of, this is a big mission tomorrow. All that kind of thing. And Peggy and Steve throughout this whole movie are very sweet. They've kind of flirted, kind of danced around each other, and and she's been a little frustrated with him sometimes, like when she fired the gun in time for him to hold up his shield, which blocked the bullets, obviously, but showed that it worked. But it kind of expressed her frustration with how he was acting, which he needed that. He needed kind of that kick in the pants. But anyway, right now they're Bucky and Steve and the Howling Commandos. They have this wonderful team, and that is united. And so for this last mission, for trying to get on this train and complete their mission and all of that, seeing Steve and Bucky protect and defend each other, and but ultimately Bucky falling, and then Steve believing that his friend is dead, that his best friend is not alive anymore. It just breaks my heart. Obviously we know later that Bucky survived, and it's a whole other story, but seeing Steve be so sad and heartbroken, and one thing Peggy reminds him, though, is that Bucky chose to follow Steve, and as Bucky himself even said, he's not following Captain America, he's following that skinny kid from Brooklyn who didn't know when to run away from a fight. I think Bucky was saying that I don't see you as this just Captain America, this initially propaganda image. I see Steve Rogers who wants to fight for what is right, and that's a really positive thing, I think, and maybe that encourages Steve a little bit, even if he still feels sad. But in any event, they still catch up to the Red Skull. They did before this, but the Red Skull and Zola got away, and right after Steve had rescued Bucky, and but at this point, Bucky is presumed dead. Steve and the Howling Commandos are kind of on their own. Steve eventually ends up on his own against the Red Skull in a final sort of fight, and the Tesseract ultimately kills the Red Skull, and Steve's on this big plane that was heading for missiles to different cities in the U.S. He has to stop it. He has to, he can't see any other option as opposed to just ditching it in the ocean. And his last goodbye to Peggy is really, really sad. And especially since before he got out of the plane, the drive to the plane and the final goodbye between him and Peggy and their kiss, it's a sweet moment. But now, knowing that they won't get another one is very sad. And that moment on the radio when he's about to ditch the plane and they're trying to, say goodbye, I still maybe think he should have told her where he was, but I think I read somewhere that he had lost his best friend. He had lost, the friend who'd been with him his whole life, and maybe didn't quite see much of a reason to live after that. That's someone else's opinion that I've read, but I kind of agree in a way. So yes, Steve ditches the plane, and the Tesseract had fallen from the plane before that. And he ends up frozen, as we saw in the beginning of the movie, and now at the end, we see how he got there. And we see him wake up in 2011 after been asleep for 70 years, and it's a whole different world. And he's left to face it on his own, with nearly no one who he knew, who is familiar to him. So, and that gets explored later, but it's almost as, we see that his rise from scrawny Steve to a super soldier who has these friends, who's working with his team, to being alone and making that sacrifice, and then not dying, but waking up in an even more unfamiliar setting. It's gotta throw you. So, ultimately, my rating for this film is an 8 out of 10. It's definitely risen as I've kept watching it, as I've learned more, as I've delved into it more. I definitely appreciate more aspects than I used to, like, Bucky and, what he went through and what he's thinking, and Steve and Peggy and everything with that, and Zola and, all those things. I just appreciate it a lot more. I think this, like I've said before, I think this movie's strongest aspect is when the Howling Commandos are fighting in their World War II setting, and it's okay that the Tesseract, I guess, and the Red Skull were, a part of the film too. I guess trying to mix historical with science fiction, I think it's a delicate balance, and I don't know if that totally worked here, but I think there were still strong elements of this movie. The World War II historical vibe did really well, and combine that with the comic book story, or at least, this movie's interpretation of the comic book characters, is really good, and I like this movie a lot, and I think more people need to go back and rewatch it, because it was a strong start to Captain America's story. So that concludes my review of Captain America, the First Avenger, which is ironic because I'm wearing a t-shirt with Captain America's shield, but kind of from the logo of the Winter Soldier, which will be another video for another time. So thank you if you watched this whole thing. Please like and subscribe if you liked this video and you want to see more. This will be posted the week after I'm recording it. So if you saw my last video and I'm wearing the same shirt, it looks like I'm wearing the same shirt. I am. Recording them ahead of time. Yay! But anyway, thank you again for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye.